Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Auto Club Speedway, the 2 mile track, the final weekend. This race kicked off the West Coast swing for the NASCAR Cup Series, and one driver that goes by the nickname Rowdy comes out on top with his brand new team. Let's get into all that went down at the final race at the 2 mile track. Number 1, Kyle Rowdy Busch in his new home with Richard Childress Racing. His second race of the team captures his first win of the year, winning yesterday's Palo Casino 400, holding off Chase Elliott, Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, and Kevin Harvick for the victory. Kyle Busch has been very, very good at this racetrack. I mean, his first Cup win came here in 2005 in the Labor Day weekend event that we had here. There was 2 races back then. Kyle Busch got his first win in the Cup Series at this track in 05, driving for Hendrick Motorsports, and then proceeded to win 2 more with Joe Gibbs Racing in back-to-back years. 2013, the thrilling finish with him, Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, and in 2014, holding off Kyle Larson for the victory. And this time, he went into his third team, his brand new team, Richard Childress Racing, a team that he joined last year after he announced that he would not be back with Joe Gibbs Racing due to not being able to find sponsorship and M&M's departing from the team. And there were a lot of people wondering about how the relationship would go with Kyle Busch and Richard Childress because of their previous run-ins from 2011 and other events in prior years. But so far, they're off to a really hot start. Kyle Busch, Randall Burnett, Richard Childress, it look like they're going to be a great combo for 2023 and beyond. And yesterday, he had a really good race car in the Lucas Oil Chevrolet. He ran up at the front for the most part. Then he ran into some adversity after a caution came out. When everyone made their pit stops, he got caught for speeding and had to restart at the back end of the field for the restart. The team called him down the radio saying, just be patient. We've got a good car. We'll work our way back up. And Kyle said on the radio, points, points, points. We're just throwing them away. Well, he was able to get back up to 11th after the end of stage 1. And then stage 2, he was continuing to march his way to the front on those restarts that we had, and he just had a good race car, was close to behind Ross Chastain at the end of stage number 2, and then by the time we got to stage 3, he really started to put up a fight against that one car, and took the lead from him with under 40 laps to go. He makes a pass on the front stretch to the inside. Chastain tried to block, and they made a little contact, but Busch was able to get a big run and pass the one car and took the lead away from him. And during green flag pit stops, he was able to hold that lead as everyone split this final green flag run of the race in half. He was able to beat the one car off pit road, drove away, and didn't look back. Even though he ran into lap traffic a few times, he still had a pretty commanding lead over second place and was able to bring home his first win with his new team. And pretty fitting that his first NASCAR Cup win comes at the 2-mile track. He wins the final race at the 2-mile track. It is pretty fitting. And surprisingly, received a strong amount of cheers yesterday. I think one of the reasons I think why is because a lot of people know what Kyle Busch dealt with last year, the year he had, knowing he wasn't going to be back with Joe Gibbs Racing and had to go to a new team and pretty much return to the Chevy camp. There are a lot of NASCAR fans that don't necessarily like Toyota, but they like Chevy apparently because, it is an American manufacturer. But Kyle Busch showed great strength yesterday. Think about this, though. What happened to Kyle Busch last weekend? He was leading the Daytona 500 off of turn 4, coming to 2 laps to go. What happens behind him? Daniel Suarez spins out and brings out a caution. If that caution did not come out, if that didn't happen, we would be talking about Kyle Busch winning back-to-back races to kick off the season. He would finally have won the Daytona 500. He would have won, obviously he won yesterday, he would have had back-to-back wins. It wasn't the case, but nonetheless, a strong start. And now a lot of the drivers in the sport are now going, oh boy, Kyle Busch is off to a strong start with his new team. This means trouble for everybody else. It kind of does, because we all know how talented, how good Kyle Busch is. Even though he's almost 40 years old, he's still that driver. He's still that guy. He's still one tough SOB and can always deliver when it matters the most. And a big congratulations to Kyle Busch and the RCR team on their win yesterday. They're off to a strong start and already looking like a championship contender. Number 2, Ross Chastain, so dominant, but comes up short. Chastain had the best car yesterday, leading 91 laps of the 200 that we ran, won both stages, stage 1 and stage 2. He had a good start to yesterday's race by running up at the front, leading a lot of laps, took stage 1 and took stage 2. And stage 3, he seemed to be in control until the challenge late by Kyle Busch. He passed him on the front stretch on the inside, and then we had our pit stop, the final pit stop of the race. Chastain actually sped up a little bit going down pit road, or trying to before the entrance to pit road to try to catch up to Kyle Busch, to at least be close to him when they get off of pit stops. They were side by side. Thankfully, Chastain didn't get busted for speeding. However, after that pit stop, they just fell back. They didn't really have the handling in the final part of that long green flag run at the end of the race like the 8 car did, and unfortunately lost second place to Chase Elliott and had to settle for third. But nonetheless, it was a great run by the one team yesterday, a great job by the whole team in general. Of course, his teammate finished fourth. This one team off to a much better start this year than a year ago, because last year they wrecked in the 500 and they had a rough weekend like this race a year ago. They crashed their car in practice. I don't remember where they finished. I think they finished pretty much in midfield. This year, though, they're off to a better start. They had a top 10 last week, and he, of course, led the most laps, won both stages, and finished third yesterday. So they're still going to be a contender to watch out for this year, that one team in Ross Chastain. Just came up a little short yesterday. Number 3, drivers overcoming adversity. We had a lot of guys overcoming some type of issue yesterday, depending on where they started or what they dealt with during the race. Starting off with the man that finished runner-up to Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, the sport's most popular driver. Now, if you remember a year ago, in this race, Chase Elliott had overcome an incident from early in the race and had worked his way back up to the front, battling for the lead with Kyle Larson and Joey Logano. But on the front stretch, Kyle Larson threw a late block when Elliott was already on the high side, and Larson squeezed his teammate into the wall, taking him out of contention for the win and left Elliott pretty upset. Well, this time, he had different adversity that he overcame, was able to make the most of it. Elliott started 33rd in this race because qualifying and practice for the weekend got rained out because we had weather this Saturday. So they weren't able to get any track time. They had to start the lineup based on metric from, where you finished in the 500 last week and also how you performed. Elliott wrecked out early in the 500 last week, so that meant he had to start 33rd. But he slowly, methodically worked his way through the field, got up to the top 10 by the end of stage 1, slipped back at the beginning of stage 2, but worked his way back up to the top 10 at the end of stage 2, and the final few laps of that green flag run before the end of the stage had one of the best cars, went from 13th to 7th, and then joined the top 5 with about 50 laps to go. And I saw the speed of that car. I'm like, he might have something for Ross Chastain and Kyle Busch, but he was a little too far back. He got by Chastain after the cycle of pit stops. Maybe with a little more lap traffic in front of the 8 car to slow him down, Elliott could have had a chance, but he was a little more than 3 seconds behind him. But nonetheless, to go from 33rd to 2nd, that's an impressive drive by that 9 team. So great job by those guys. Daniel Suarez, Chastain's teammate, we talked about how strong Chastain was. Well, Suarez was also strong. He wasn't race-winning strong, but he was top 5 strong yesterday. They had great speed at the beginning of this race, like they did in this race a year ago, where he finished 4th. But Suarez, like Kyle Busch, had to overcome adversity. After the end of stage 1, everybody came down pit road for the pit stops before we got started with stage 2. Suarez got caught for speeding, so he had to restart the back end of the field. But the crew told him, hey, the 8 car did it. You can do it. Go to the front. And he did. He had to dodge a wreck of the restart on the front stretch, but after that, he got himself back into the top 10 and ran with those guys pretty much the rest of the race and comes home with a 4th place finish. So they had good speed. They're going to be able to be battling for wins and top 5s this year, I guarantee. Brad Keselowski had a really rough race here a year ago, was caught up in a wreck late. Well, this time he had a good race car all day, but early in the race, he got spun on the backstretch by Corey LaJoie and sent spinning around, bringing out a caution. He fell a lap down, but he got his lap back eventually and worked his way back into the top 10. And at one point, on the final stage one of the final stage restarts, he was going for the lead on the back straightaway going to turn 3. That car just had some horsepower under it, but he slipped back, but ultimately comes home with a solid 7th place finish. A much better start in year 2 for him with his team that he drives for and co-owns at the same time. So nice job by Brad and that 6 team. Martin Truex Jr., who kicked off the season by winning the Busch Clash, had a rough finish last week in the 500, overcame adversity yesterday as well. They had a good car at the beginning and were one of the best Toyotas along with Denny Hamlin, but Truex had a problem on a pit stop where they didn't get the lug tight on the left front and they lost the wheel leaving pit road. And under the new rules for loose wheels this year, if you lose control of your wheel, your crew chief doesn't get suspended for 4 races, which I kind of like that rule. It's the 2 guys that changing the tire that goes loose. They get a 2-race suspension, and the driver during the race has to get held for 2 laps, which Truex served that 2-lap penalty, got both of his laps back, and worked his way back to almost a top 10 finish, coming home in 11th spot. But that's a pretty good comeback after that 2-lap penalty, losing that wheel. And Corey LaJoie had a really good race car yesterday, in the top 15 pretty much all day long. But he spun on the front stretch at the middle of stage 2 and he had to bounce back from that spin, and he worked his way back up to finish in the 14th spot. He did a really good job. That car, again, was a top 15 car all day yesterday. It wasn't basically by taking strategy for track position. They had good speed in that car yesterday to run up front with the big guys. So nice job by him, and really good job by all those guys overcoming some type of adversity and getting a good result out of it. Number 4, calamity on the front stretch. During one of the restarts at stage 2, we had a little bit of a stack up at the front of the field and caused some guys in the middle of the pack to bunch up and start spinning and crashing into one another. Some of them included some guys that were up at the front earlier. Polster or Christopher Bell, who led lap 1, but quickly dropped to the field like a rock dropping to the bottom of the ocean. That car was just not good at all. Ryan Blaney, who was battling up at the front earlier, leading laps, he was caught up in the incident and was not competitive the rest of the way. 2 of the 4 Stewart-Haas cars, Eric Almirola and Ryan Preece. Ty Dillon was a part of it. Justin Haley was a part of it. Todd Gilliland. And Tyler Reddick, a guy who dominated this race a year ago, never cracked the top 15 yesterday. That car was not good whatsoever. A lot of these guys bunched up, and, it all started apparently, according to radio. The 42 car of Noah Gragson, who stayed out on one of the previous restarts, was a few rows ahead of these guys and stacked them all up by spinning the tires, and that's what led to everybody bunching up in the guys' middle of the pack, spinning and crashing into one another. So unfortunate for those guys. It was actually the biggest pileup we ever had in Fontana history. The biggest one I can remember up until this incident was the 2009 Fontana race in the fall, where Dale Earnhardt Jr. got turned on the front stretch and collected 4 of the Richard Petty Motorsports cars. Jeff Burton, Brian Vickers, and Marcus Ambrose at the time. And, of course, Vickers and Casey Kane, who was one of the Petty cars, they were playoff contenders at that time. Dale Jr. was not. That's the last big pileup I can remember that we had at this racetrack. And yesterday topped that. Unfortunate for some of those guys, because I felt like a few of them could have had some good results, particularly the 12 car. The 20 and the 45, really disappointed in them because I felt like they were going to run really well. But what can you do about getting caught up in an accordion effect in an incident on the front stretch on a restart? And number 5, the final hurrah for Auto Club Speedway's 2-mile configuration. This weekend, as many of you know, was the final race on the 2-mile track at Fontana, California, because in a few years, we are going to be converting this racetrack into a short track, a track that has long front straightaways like Martinsville and high banked corners like Bristol, basically. So pretty much making it a combination of Martinsville and Bristol out on the West Coast. And it's a shame to see this track, not being on the 2-mile configuration anymore. And the plan is to be in the new Fontana racetrack in 2025. We're not going to be here in 2024. But it is quite a shame, because I got to tell you something, folks. Over the years, at the beginning years of this track, we have had some good racing. Then at the beginning of the 2010s, the racing started to kind of dwindle down. And in the middle years, it just wasn't that good whatsoever. It was kind of spread out, not a lot of passing. Not a lot of entertainment, excitement for the fans. But last year, when we brought this next-gen car to this racetrack, holy crap, it was one of the best races at this track I've seen in years. Years. Probably since 2014. That year was a really good year at this track. 2013 was really good. 2010 was awesome. This car provided some of the best racing we've seen in years at this facility last year. Great battles all day, side-by-side action. Obviously, there were a lot of tire incidents, and that was because guys were getting used to the new 18-inch wheel tires at this track, especially with the next-gen car. But still, we had some great racing. We had a great finish with Kyle Larson beating off a lot of these guys that you normally don't see, like Austin Dillon and Eric Jones and Daniel Suarez at the time. We had some great racing last year. And this year, the final race of this 2-mile track, it did not disappoint. We had great racing all day, side-by-side action, comers and goers. We obviously, Chastain and Kyle Busch were the 2 best cars, but we had other guys competing for the front as well, like Joey Logano, Alex Bowman, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott when he got up there late, Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick in his final race here at this track, Ryan Blaney at the beginning, as I mentioned. Chris Buescher was in the top 10. William Byron was up front. We just had a lot of comers and goers yesterday, and great side-by-side action and great racing. For the lead, for third, for fifth, for ninth, we had some great battles yesterday. Obviously, seeing a long green flag around the end kind of sucks, but at the same time, that's what happens when the guys are, doing a great job at managing their tires before they come down pit road and change them. But we got some great racing yesterday. For the final time at Fontana Speedway, or Auto Club Speedway, as you like to call it, or like it's what it's really called, I think we got a great race for it yesterday to close out amazing 26 years. Obviously, we're not going away from that area completely. Of course, we'll be back with this new short track configuration in at the very least 2025. But it's kind of a shame to see it go. You saw it open up with hometown, Californian boy and Jeff Gordon winning the first one, and Kyle Busch wins the last one. Both Chevy drivers. We've had some great memories at this 2-mile track. There were some years where it's really good, and there were some that weren't so good. But these last 2 years of this track were phenomenal. And Auto Club, thank you so much for the memories on the 2-mile track. We're going to miss it, but you put on some great racing yesterday. And also, shout out to the track workers yesterday that were able to dry the track after a complete rain out that we had on Saturday. We were able to get the track dry. No weepers out there yesterday. I mean, especially with those seams. They just did a great job, and that put on some really good racing yesterday. So thanks again, Fontana, 2-mile track, for the memories. And we will look forward to the new short track configuration in the foreseeable future. So the West Coast Swing's officially underway, and now we're off to Viva Las Vegas, and that's Kyle Busch's home track. And he's going to be running all 3 series races this upcoming weekend. That'll be fun for the rest of the competition. But we're going to see what happens. Who's going to go in? Who's going to win big next weekend at Vegas? We had great racing at this racetrack last year in both races. Alex Bowman edging out his teammate Kyle Larson for the win in the spring. Joey Logano in a thrilling battle for the win, and take it to Phoenix on the line in the fall race, and Logano was able to get the best of Chastain. We had great racing last year. Are we going to see the same this year? I surely hope so. So looking forward to this race. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Subscribe, like, and once again, congratulations to Kyle Busch and Richard Childress Racing on their first win together and the start of something big with these guys. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Let's go racing!